Well, I've spent my time mixed between being in the workshop and out at the front of the house repairing my Land Rover. So the progress is a bit disjointed. The taper turning attachment has been rebuilt and fitted, and you'll see a bit of that later on. Meanwhile, I've got the saddle sat, and it's been sat on there now for getting on for 3 weeks. And that's basically just to make sure it's settled, because it's been stood on its end for getting on for 4 or 5 months. So now it's settled, I've got to rebed that and make sure everything's as it should be, and then I can check the fit between the underside of the saddle and the top side of the apron and the gearbox and the feed screws. So yeah, leave you the video. Please leave us a comment, let me know what you think, and I hope it's entertaining. Hello to the new subscribers. Hope there's something in some of the playlists. There's well over 100 videos now on the channel. Doesn't seem that long since I started putting them together. And thanks again to the 2 Patreons I've got, and also the donations I've had via PayPal. Incredibly well received, not least because I can now see the inside of my workshop. Cheers for now. Well, I've started putting the feeds and apron on. A bit of a wrestle. I haven't recorded any of it because the language was a bit fraught. What I've ended up doing is building up a rickety tower of death, and then a couple of wedges to help adjust it up and down enough so that I can get the feed rods in as predicted. There was no way I was going to feed them in from the end because it would have meant moving the shaper, and to be brutally honest, I didn't want to do that. Anyway, it's worked. The last bit I've got to do now is connect up the gears on the end. I've done that one, which is on the lead screw, and the position that way is set, and I'll bring you to that in a bit. It's set on the end of the lead screw. I've got the feed drive gear on. That went on fairly easy. The last one is the on-off actuator. You can see it's got a taper pin hole here. That goes on the end of it, and I've marked the thick end, and it goes through here, comes out to the side, which you just can't quite see down there, and picks up on this bevel gear as well, and that's all a bit tight. So I shall get that mounted on, and then I can fit the hanger on that fits on the other end. All I've done, I've just wrapped a bit of twine around it so that it can't fall, or it's less inclined to. So that's the 2 bevel gears on. Now the end of this near shaft, I'll get the light out of the way here, that bevel gear is connected onto the shaft and drives at the back there a spur gear, and that spur gear runs on a rack underneath that tube, which is connected through to this shaft, which has got the stops on and the micrometer stop. Now my dilemma is I'm not entirely sure at what point these spur gears need to be meshed, or conversely at what point these bevel gears, at what point that spur gear needs to be in that shaft, because there's only a small amount of actuation on it. So that's going to be a bit of a pain in the rear arse, because you can't get to that to knock it out whilst it's on the lathe, so that's fixed. Obviously the shaft at the back will move in and out, and that's fixed to it from memory, although there's an empty, no, perhaps it isn't yet. Anyway, getting the timing of all that lot right is to me major issue. and making sure that I haven't forgot any bits. Anyway, right now it's lunchtime. Right, well, I thought I'd take a look at the this catches the end of all the feed rods and drives and whatever, so it sits on the end of the bed. Top one is for the lead screw, and then you've got 3 other wheels. Bottom one is literally the on off. That's the main drive, and that's the micrometer stop. The reason I'm showing it is Holbrook's registered a patent against this adjustment mechanism for controlling the end float of the lead screw. So you've got basically a ball on the end of a, what do you call that, a locking screw, there's a technical term, which sits on there. Here's the ball, sits in the back of the brass housing. I'm doing this for demonstrations, it's all got to be cleaned up yet. And that's stopped from rotating with a pin, you can just see it. Then there's a second one. I'll explain why that's that shape in a minute. So they fit over the lead screw, and that fits onto a slot on the lead screw. And then there's a cup spacer sits in there, and then this whole assembly screws onto there. So by ratcheting that round one way to the other, well, you tighten it up with that, and then you can set the amount of end float on the lead screw to basically next to nothing. So I've got to give it a good clean out and get that one stuck on next. This is one-handed, so the tapered collar, which has now vacuumed itself on, that goes on first. And then that slides in behind it. The only thing is, I have currently got the lead screw shoved that way a bit, so I need to just tap it back through so I can physically get this lot built on, because it ain't going on now. I'm not forcing it. It's not a million miles off. Well, I've spent a couple of hours cocking about getting ready for some new lighting to go in, because these old, they're decent generation fluorescents, but they're about 12-year-old, and to be brutally honest, they're crap. So I've bought some new LED light units, so while I'm knocking about up there, I've covered up the lathe and I'm having a look at this, which is the taper turning attachment. I've only took out two fixings, come to do these, and these definitely aren't the original fixings, because the Whitworth, not Whitworth fine. You see the nuts aren't right either. Holbrook wouldn't have gone to the trouble of making that a lovely radiused recess and then put a nasty nut in the middle of it. Anyway, so I'm just taking it apart, which is a bit of a messy job. Once it's taken apart, we'll be degreasing, stripping it off and finding out what's underneath. So I'll bring you back in a bit. Well, not too tricky to get apart. The slider's rusted onto the slide guide. Obviously this is pretty badly stained. I think the rusting and all that is mostly going to clean up. The adjuster screw, I think it's just dirty threads, but that's moves about ½ inch each way, so I'll soak it all and see what we're at. The reason for doing this rather than getting the bedding done on that is this is going to generate a load of muck. Knocking the shelf brackets around has generated a load of dust and stuff, and I don't want to start scraping with stuff in the air. So I am moving my way around and slowly getting stuff up off the floor. There's a fixed steady as well hiding away down there, and a travelling steady in the depths. So I just want to get this stuff cleaned up ready for a paint, and then I can be doing that whilst the get the lights fixed. So there we go. Did I mention it was dirty? Absolutely ram-packed full, this. Anyway, it's all apart now. Needs going over with a wild brush, strip the paint off, clean this back to cast, and then we'll probably give that a coat of paint, and then we'll have to assess how bad the pitting is on this, whether it wants re-scraping. Right, I'm just getting ready to fit the first LED light. So that's the existing tube fitting, which is a 5-foot twin tube, and I'm going to be replacing it with a 6-foot lightweight tube, and I'll show you the details of these in a minute. Anyway, next image will be hopefully the new light up, show how bright it is, but that's just about lit me lathe, and that's about me lot. And then obviously you've got the daylight from the window. Right, it's took about 5 minutes, wire it up, and there we go. Bing! I mean, just for the fact I'm having to wince when I'm looking at it, that's bloody brilliant. That's the old fitting. Nothing wrong with it, it's just due a bulb change, and the cost of the bulbs are half the price of a new fitment, which is I think it's a 60 watt, I think the consumption on these. I need to check what the consumption is on those, but they're not as efficient. Oh, I'm well chuffed with that. You get a bloody suntan now. The light units themselves are just feel like nothing. I mean, it's a one-handed job. It's basically all plastic with a diffuser. They're very slim. I think they're 3 inches wide and about 1 inch thick. For a you can buy them online, 28 quid, including delivery. Now I've got a local lighting shop who I'm trying to support, and I think they were 32 quid. So it's cost me 15 quid more to get them locally. That's the manufacturer, 5-year warranty, Samsung LEDs in it. They do 3 colours. I got the daylight one, which is a 6000 kV, or 6400k, and it's just infinitely better than a bloody strip light. And they, when I put them up, which was about 15-16 years ago, they were the best you could get at the time. So I've not had to change the bulbs in them. They've lasted well, but time for a new one. A word of thanks. These have been invested for over the last I think it's about 8-9 months of Patreon donations, and this is what I've invested in. So thanks very much to my patrons. Hope the video's looking better when we get some lighting on the situation. Oh yeah, comedy instructions. It's too small to actually read, but it ain't complicated. They come with a connector, which I might use on these. Right, I'll get the other 2 up and then do the next bit. So I've got the lights all on, so all fixed up. So that's my first one. That's my second one. And that's my third one. I've never actually seen the milling machine in light, or the grinder. I've only ever, this end of the workshop's only ever had a spotlight here, and then a couple of little spots over the mill. It's absolutely staggering. Well, it's been a couple of days, and the paint's hardened off on the taper turning castings. Cleaned off the over paint. It's had a couple of coats. I think it's acceptable. There's a couple of thin spots, but we can live with that. Time to have a better look at the actual sliding components. So this is the piece that slides left or right, and the cross slide is attached to. It's got a gib fitting on one side, and then that's the sliding face, which is pretty scored up. as you can see. That's the gib, matching score lines and a bit of corrosion. And then that's the guide, if you like, which has clearly been scraped at some stage. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Bear with me. God, it's amateur hour. Right, so yeah, there's evidence of scraping, but it's this section's. So there's evidence of scraping, but this section's where the where it was all rusted on. I can't feel a step, but I'm not happy that it's going to work as well as I'd like it to. So I am probably going to re-scrape that side and that, and bring it back into being parallel and smooth all the way along. And then once that's scraped, scrape its mating face and the gib face, which is probably not a bad thing, because that'll get me back into the rhythm for scraping, and then I've got to bed the saddle on. This could prove entertaining, so I've not picked up a scraper in quite a few months. First pass, so it's just a case of getting some texture down. That's blunt. No, swap that, that's blunt. Yep, my arm aches already. Not a precision ground flat stone. Still waiting for my samples. Probably free promotional gift. This is the point at which Chris looks at it and then says, well, I hope you're better in the other direction. It was subtle. Very much doubt we'll get a print off this. Yeah, well, it ain't flat, that's for sure. So back we go the other direction. There's a gentleman commented on one of my earlier videos saying that Stuart's micrometer blue is also available in red, which I've never seen, so keeping an eye open for some. I have to search for my roller. So we're printing there and there. That's where the mating piece was welded on, and that's where the surface is lower. So on and on we go. I'll bring you back when we've got a bit of a pattern. Right, that's had it's getting on for a dozen passes, and it's starting to come in all the way over now. It's hinging nicely. I just need to get a bit more of an even distribution, but for what it's doing, it would pass now. So we'll give it a bit more and then flip it over, give that a face, and then we'll have to measure the width, and we've got to get it within a couple of tenths parallel. Let's finish the first side. I've not took it down deep enough to take the scoring out. But it prints up well. Now I've got to flip it over, measure the width, measure the width across here, and just see what sort of variation I've got, and then work that down. But right now it's tea time. You can hear the dog outside, she's ready to come in. Yeah. So quick, rough and ready. This is the face we've scraped, and I'm measuring the parallel edge, this one. The figures down this side relate to the top measurement, and the figures down that side relate to the bottom measurement, so over the height of it. Basically we've got 0, 0 at the end, same on that end, which is reassuring, and then we've got 4 10,000ths, so just under half a thou fatter in that section, then down to 3. Then we've got a thinner section here at the top. Oops, one skew width, and then sort of 2 parts of nothing down there. These are tenths. So basically this area needs a bit of material off, and not take too much off the centre section. So I'll have attack that tomorrow. Right, so we're on the second side, sat on a surface plate with a tenths indicator. We've got plus or minus 4 tenths. So we've got a low spot there, that's 5 tenths. So we've got roughly a thou variation. So I shall get a straight edge out. We're going to leave the middle where it is because it's near enough zeroed. I don't want to take any off that end, but basically from here we've got around about half a thou to come off, and then we'll retest it. Well, that's where we've ended up. The figures are in 10,000ths of an inch, so 0, 0 at each end, and then running along the bottom edge we've got noughts until here, and then with a 10,000th down and a 10,000th down, same above it. Naught, 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 one at that end. So I've got a variation of basically plus or minus 1 10,000th, which I think is more than bloody acceptable. Contact's not bad, but as I say, that's total variation, including the needle flutter from the scraping. So it's as good as I want it to be. Might clean up the top, and then I've got to do the mating part. So day one of the lockdown in the UK. We're allowed to go out to exercise once, and then there's food shopping or essential business. So we're out exercising, and what a glorious day it is. Hey Skippy, there you go. Hey, up here you wouldn't think there was a trouble. This is the gib strip from the taper turning attachment. It's actually steel, and it was like a banana high in the middle. So we've flattened the middle out, and we're just chasing these out now to bring in the ends and then flatten it all off. Steel's different when you're scraping. You don't get the sort of dusty bits off. You get little sharp needles. So really don't want to run your hand over it when you're done. Contrary to what some of the two teachers tell you. Otherwise the end of your finger ends up looking like a porcupine has attacked it. If you don't believe me, have a go at doing so. We've all got a bit of steel hanging about. And cleaning the end off. Don't do that with your finger either. Now if I'd done that with the conventional jabbing at it and scraping straight, that would be like a porcupine at the minute. But there's very little in the way of a burr. My precision ground stone that isn't, that's my roughing face, that's for getting into corners, and that's my smooth face. So when I'm doing steel, just take the worst of it off with the reverse of it. And spread it out a bit more. I've fitted the taper turning attachment now. I've rebuilt it back up. Set the gib adjustment so it gives a nice easy slide, and there's no rock, no variation in it. It's lovely. That's perhaps a little stiffer than I would have wanted, but I think that's basically just how the thing's, everything on it is spot on. There's no movement, but I can't feel any backlash in it either, so it moves well. The piece that attaches this way is actually part of the cross slide, so that'll go on later. Job's well done, quite happy with that. And it sits in a T-slot on the back, so the whole assembly will actually slide left and right. So yeah, onwards and upwards.